I recently completed a trilogy where I beat Pikmin 1 with only yellow Pikmin, then only blue Pikmin, and then finally only red Pikmin. And I thought I was finished with the game because there's only 3 types of Pikmin in Pikmin 1. But then I found out something about the game that honestly kind of blew my mind. Pikmin 1 doesn't have 3 types of Pikmin. It has 4. And this 4th Pikmin type is so mysterious, so unknown, that I bet 99% of players have never even used it before. And this mysterious type is Puffmin. You see, when you attack the Puffstool who's located in the forest navel, he will disperse a poison mist that converts your Pikmin into Puffmin. And Puffmin are not your friends. They will try and hurt Olimar any chance they get, and even fight Pikmin under your control. Normally, you can't control Puffmin. Even if you try to whistle them, they will ignore your calls and attack if you get too close. But if you perfectly time your whistle as the Puffstool is doing its attack, you can actually get the Puffmin under your command and they will now fight by your side. And Puffmin can do anything normal Pikmin can do. They can break down walls, carry ship parts, and even kill enemies. But they do come with some pretty big downsides. First of all, they can't be thrown. Like, at all. Which means parts that are up on ledges are gonna be off limits to us. Second, they can't be dismissed. Which means once a Puffmin is under your control, they stay under your control. And third, once a Puffmin is finished doing any task, it'll transform back into a regular Pikmin. Which means we have to take time to go and convert it all over again. As you can see, these are some pretty big limitations. Limitations that are exclusive to Puffmin. So, it begs the question, would it be possible to beat the game like this? Would it be possible to beat Pikmin 1 with only Puffmin? Well, the answer is technically no. The Puffstool, the creature that allows you to turn Pikmin into Puffmin, can only be found in the forest navel. It doesn't appear in any other level. So that means we wouldn't be able to collect parts in the Impact Site, Forest of Hope, Distant Spring, or Final Trial. Which obviously severely hinders our chance at beating the game. But this wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to see what Puffmin were capable of. If a Puffstool was added to every level, I wanted to see if Puffmin alone were able to beat the game. So that's exactly what I did. With the help of Minty Meeo, who was able to add a Puffstool to every level in the game, I was able to answer that question. If given the chance, can Puffmin alone beat this game? And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, this one was a doozy. As we land on day 1, you can see there's a Puffstool where there's not normally supposed to be a Puffstool, and we are going to take full advantage of it. So I plucked my first Pikmin and began the process of turning him into a Puffmin. And it turns out, it's not as easy as I thought it was. To perform this glitch properly, you have to whistle your Pikmin right as it's being turned into a Puffmin. And the window for actually doing this is pretty small. Do it too early and your Pikmin will just come running back to you without changing into a Puffmin. Do it too late and your Pikmin will turn into a Puffmin but won't be under your control. I do eventually get it right and actually get a Puffmin on my side, but it takes a long time. And it doesn't really matter for the first day since there isn't a time limit, but for the rest of the run, where there is a time limit, it's gonna matter big time. Especially because every time a Puffmin completes a task, they will transform back into a regular Pikmin. Which means I'm gonna have to be doing this glitch a lot. And what makes the whole thing worse is that Puffmin are still considered enemies even though they're under my control. So when Puffmin complete a task, like say bringing a pellet back to base, they will transform back into a regular Pikmin and try and hunt the other Puffmin down. And if they catch them, they kill them without hesitation. This basically means I can't really head back to base with Puffmin under my control, because if there's any idle Pikmin standing around, they'll try and kill them. And I can't really afford losing Pikmin because it's really annoying growing more. Like, just look how long it takes to get a pellet. I have to first convert them into a Puffmin, then get them to attack the pellet posy, then they turn back into a regular Pikmin, I have to convert them one more time, and then finally, we can bring the pellet back to the onion. All that for 2 Pikmin. And I realize I could break down the pellet posy with just Olimar, so I only have to convert them once, which is what I ended up doing for most of this run. But for bigger enemies that you can't kill with just Olimar, this isn't really an option. And those bigger enemies are the ones that net you the most Pikmin, so yeah, growing Pikmin is going to be really slow. You know what else makes it hard to grow Pikmin? Not being able to throw them. Since you can't throw Puffmin, these 2 pellets are completely out of our reach, which actually almost ends up screwing us. Without these 2 pellets, we are just barely able to get the amount of Pikmin we need to take the engine back to the ship. It takes 20 Pikmin to carry the engine, and we're able to grow 21. We were 1 pellet away from this run being dead right off the bat. But thankfully, it isn't, and as soon as we collect the engine, we're able to move on to the Force of Hope. And one thing becomes very apparent as soon as we land on day 2. Turning large groups of Pikmin into Puffmin is very annoying. I'd be able to get like 20 out of 21 Pikmin converted, but that one Pikmin that I couldn't convert would turn into a regular Puffmin and start attacking me, which would force me to shake them off, thus turning them back into a regular Pikmin, which obviously causes problems. So every time I convert my squad, I have to make sure that every single one of them gets converted properly, or it's just not gonna work. Thankfully, for the rest of the day, I'm able to do this pretty successfully, which allows me to bring back the Eternal Fuel Dynamo and find yellow Pikmin. And let me tell you, yellow Pikmin are a major speed bump in this run. Because, guess what? Picking up bombs counts as completing a task. So anytime a Puffmin picks up a bomb, it'll turn back into a yellow Pikmin. And you can turn a yellow Pikmin holding a bomb back into a Puffmin, but the problem is they'll drop the bomb in the process. Which means doing that is pretty much useless. And honestly, when I found this out, I was kind of stuck. I've already shown you guys that it is possible beating the game without bomb rods, but it wouldn't be possible beating the game without bomb rods and with only Puffmin. To get the guard satellite without bomb rods, for example, you have to throw Pikmin up on the sledge, then clip through the wall to kill beady Lawnlights. But since we can't throw, getting the guard satellite will be out of the question. So adding this limitation would make this already hard run even harder, and we still wouldn't be able to do it anyways, so it didn't really make sense. So I really only had one other option, and that was to treat these yellow Pikmin already holding bombs just like the Puffmin, even though they really weren't. Which means I couldn't throw them and couldn't dismiss them. Which would make setting off these bombs an issue, but at least it would be faithful to how Puffmin normally behave. So it keeps the spirit of the challenge intact, even though they aren't technically Puffmin. Even though with the way we are treating them, they might as well be. But yeah, since we can't throw them, we have to come up with another way of setting off these bombs. And luckily for us, there's a Bulborb right by the gate that can do it for us. If we lure him over and get him to eat the Pikmin holding the bomb, it'll explode, creating a chain reaction big enough to blow down the gate. Now with the gate down, we have access to the Whimsical Radar. And you would think getting the Whimsical Radar without being able to throw Pikmin would be an issue. But it's really not. If we lure this Bulborb over by the wall and kill it, it'll drop a pellet that we can use to clip Olimar out of bounds. And I've already explained how this works in my other videos, but basically the gist of it is when Olimar lies down, he becomes an object. And the game doesn't like when objects overlap each other. So when they do, the game will try and fix this by moving one of the objects. So when Olimar lies inside the pellet here, the game just decides to push him out of bounds. Which works great for us, because now we can walk right over to the Whimsical Radar and use the same mechanic I just talked about to perform a glitch called object nudging to slowly push it off the ledge. And again, I've explained this glitch more in depth in my other videos, so if you want to know more, check out my red only run or my yellow only run of Pikmin 1. But yeah, now that we have the Whimsical Radar on the ground, we can convert our Pikmin into Puffmin and then come back and get the part. And since killing enemies converts Puffmin back into Pikmin, I'll be doing it as little as possible in this run. Which leads to a lot of situations like this where I have to distract this Bulborb while my Pikmin sneak the parts by. Oh yeah, another useful feature of lying down is that Olimar doesn't take damage while he's in this state, so we can just sit here and chill while this Bulborb is trying to tear our guts out. After that, we clip out of bounds again using the same pellet as before, but instead of going to where the whimsical radar was, we head over towards the extraordinary bolt. We drop down inside the pit and start nudging the bolt over to the wall, which will cause the part to waypoint reset in the morning. And again, this is a mechanic that I've explained in other videos, but basically, when you put parts in weird spots they're not supposed to be, the game doesn't like it, and tries to move them to an area that it considers more stable. And that area just happens to be right outside this gate, which helps us out a ton because we don't have to waste 9 yellow Pikmin breaking it down. But now that it's free, we can grab it and the Nova Blaster and bring both back to base, which actually gives us enough parts to make it to the Forest Navel. Which, by the way, is extremely lucky, because there's only 4 parts left in the Forest of Hope, and we can't get any of them without blues. Well, actually you can, with some creative skips, but every single one of these skips isn't possible with Puffmin. You can blow up this wall with yellows, which requires throwing. You can throw Pikmin on this ledge, avoiding the water, which again requires throwing. You can take Pikmin for a swim to the Sagittarius, but drowning turns Puffmin back into Pikmin. And finally, you can throw yellows over this box, pushing it from the other side, which again obviously requires a throw. And the single part left in the impact site also suffers the same fate. So once again, this run got extremely close to not being possible, but we got lucky and had just enough parts to unlock the Forest Navel, which is where we're headed to next. The first thing I wanted to do when I got to the Forest Navel was to get what I consider the easiest part in the level, the Atomic Gear. But the Atomic Gear isn't the easiest part to get, at least not with Puffmin. With Puffmin, it's really hard, and it's all because of this fucking stick. Building this stick counts as a task, so when the Puffmin are finished building it, they will turn back into normal Pikmin, which I expected, but what I didn't expect is that climbing the stick also counts as a task. So when they're done climbing it to reach the other side, they just turn back into regular Pikmin, which makes getting the gear kind of impossible. We can't throw them up there, and we can't get them across the stick. So what are we gonna do? Well, luckily for us, there is a way we can get up there, but unluckily for us, it's really annoying. Just like in the Forest of Hope, the plan is to use a pellet to clip up on this high ledge. We can lure one of these shearweeds over and kill it right by the wall, which will drop a pellet we can use to clip up. The problem comes from the pellet's interaction with this wall. For some reason, when the pellet gets close to this wall, it starts sliding towards it on its own, and it'll keep sliding until it presses right against the wall. And at this point, we can no longer get between the wall and the pellet to perform the clip. So the pellet is useless to us, and we have to reset. When the pellet isn't in this sliding animation, it's too far away from the wall to use. So it puts us in this awkward situation where we have to push the pellet close enough to the wall where it starts sliding, then rush around to the other side, lie down, and then perform the clip. And doing this took me like 30 tries. It might not seem that hard, but it was super finicky. And most of the time, it would end up looking like this. But eventually, I was able to get it, and at that point, the rest was easy. We just had to nudge the gear off the ledge and collect it with our Puffmin. The rest of the day was spent finding blue Pikmin and growing as many of them as possible. And because of how hard it is to grow new Pikmin with Puffmin, we only managed to grow 33. Which was thankfully enough to grab the Ionium Jet and bring it back to base with only 2 seconds left in the day. Oh, and did I mention you can't call Puffmin back with the whistle? Yeah, it just doesn't work. So, if I send a Pikmin to do a task and it doesn't complete it, it's just gonna die. Which was very close to happening here. On day 6, we headed over towards the gravity jumper. And since we can't throw, I actually had to get the part the intended way, which is walking through the water with your blue Pikmin and building the bridge from the other side, which I don't think anyone has ever done, like, ever. Honestly though, this part was annoying because I had to break down this bridge, bring the Pikmin back to base, convert them back to Puffmin, bring them all the way down again, break down this bridge, go all the way back to base again, and then come back and finally grab the part. Thankfully, while I was doing this, I had 3 separate groups of Puffmin breaking down these 2 bridges and this wall here. Since Puffmin turn back into Pikmin once they're finished a task, I found it way more efficient getting small groups to tackle many things at once than having one big group work on a single thing. So once the wall was broken down, I grabbed some Puffmin and went to grab the analog computer. And this part was deceptively hard. One thing I should explain that I haven't really touched on yet is that Puffmin will inherit the ability from the Pikmin they previously were before being converted. So if I convert a blue Pikmin into a Puffmin, they keep the ability to breathe underwater. Or if I convert a red Pikmin, it'll keep its immunity to fire. The problem is, to get the analog computer in the easiest way possible, you need blues and reds. Blues to get the part out of the water, and reds to get it through the fire geysers. And this wouldn't really be a problem if it weren't for the fact that I can't whistle my Pikmin once they're on the part. Luckily, there is a mechanic that might be able to help us out here though. In Pikmin 1, basically anything that's not on the screen isn't really loaded in the game. You can see this effect here with the armored cannon beetle, which, when we don't show it on the screen, just won't attack us and allows us to get the radiation canopy without being harmed. So theoretically, if we get our Pikmin on the part and just walk away, they shouldn't be affected by the fire geysers. And not even theoretically, because I know this happens. I've had it happen to me before in another video, before I even knew this mechanic was a thing. But for some reason, I just couldn't get it to work again. I went all the way to the other side of the map, made sure my camera was looking away from my Pikmin, and it still didn't work. I'm not sure why it didn't work, because, like I said, I've had it work before. But if you could let me know in the comments what I did wrong, that would be great, because I have no idea. So even though we couldn't get the trick to work, the one silver lining was that when my Puffmin caught on fire, they turned back into Pikmin, so I was actually able to whistle them back. Once we rescued our blues, we headed back to base, quickly disposed of this piece of garbage, and ended the day. Day 7 was basically a cleanup day. I went around grabbing all the parts that we just gained access to the day before. I got the space float and grabbed the gravity jumper and analog computer with red Puffmin. On day 8, we performed a trick that I've performed a million times already on this channel. We lure Shearwig over here, use the pellet to clip up on the wall, walk along the edge, clip up to this higher area, and push the part down. I'm serious though. I've performed this trick like 10 times on this channel. At this point, I think I've gotten this part more times using this trick than I have the normal way. Next, I turned my sights on the anti-diauxin filter. And you can see here that I used the trick I mentioned earlier, where if enemies aren't on the screen, they aren't really loaded. I zoom in the camera as far as I can and focus on the one Wollywog, while the second one is out of frame and therefore not loaded in the game, and therefore can't hurt us. You can see when I zoom out the camera, he loads back in and tries to make an attack on my Pikmin. But unfortunately for him, it's too late. But we aren't out of the woods yet, because the Puffmin I have carrying the part are really blue Pikmin. And once again, in case you forgot, I can't call them off of it. But somehow, by some miracle, we're able to make it through this bullshit completely unharmed. Oh, you guys want to see a really fun glitch? If Pikmin are climbing back up the onion and the Puffstool drops his poison mist on them while they're doing it, they get completely stuck in place. Nothing you can do can get them down off the onion. And you would think that since they're in base, they would be completely safe if we ended the day, but you'd be wrong. They all die. Either way, it didn't really affect the run too much, but I thought it was interesting. You'll literally never see this anywhere else because it can only happen if there's a Puffstool in your base, which isn't possible in the base game. So now that we have blue Pikmin, we can head back to the Forest of Hope and grab some of the parts we missed there. We take some of our blue Pikmin and sloppily sneak the shock absorber past this Bulborb. After that, we get to work breaking down the walls leading to the radiation canopy. And as my Pikmin are busy doing that, I once again lure this guy over to the wall and use the pellet he drops to clip out of bounds. I walk all the way over to where the Sagittarius is, drop down, and push it off the ledge. Which is something I had to do because even though we have blue Pikmin, you need to throw them up on this ledge to build the bridge, which gives you access to the part. But by doing it this way, we can push the part right off the ledge and just grab it with our blue Pikmin. The next day, we focus on opening up more of the Forest of Hope. Specifically, this stone wall that leads to the Geiger counter. Unfortunately, we can't use this Bulborb we used before. This wall is just outside of his range, so as soon as he gets close to it, he turns around and heads back home. But what we can do is lure a male sheargrub from all the way over here and get him to eat our Pikmin right by the wall, blowing it up in the process. Once that's done, we head over to face off with the cannon beetle. And by face off, I mean use the same trick as before and sneak the radiation canopy from right under his nose. The next part on our list is the repair type bolt. And the repair type bolt is gonna be an issue. The way you're supposed to get this part is by throwing your Pikmin up on this ledge here, then using the C-stick to maneuver your Pikmin across the ledge until they reach the part. Obviously, we can't do that because we can't throw Puffmin. And if you watched my no throwing challenge, you know there is a way to get this part without throwing Pikmin. If you use the Puffy Blowhog to blow the Pikmin up on this ledge, you can maneuver them over to the ledge you're supposed to throw them on, all without a single throw. The issue is though, we're using Puffmin, and when Puffmin get blown by a Puffy Blowhog, they turn back into regular Pikmin. So this isn't gonna work. We have to go even further beyond. If we lure this Wollywog over to the wall by rubbing on its butt, yes, I'm serious, rubbing on a Wollywog's butt will make it follow you way longer than it should. It's a whole thing. But regardless, after we massage some Wollywog butt, we can lie down between it and the wall and use it to clip up on the wall the same way we did with the pellet in the Forest of Hope. Now that we're on the wall, all we have to do is walk over to the repair type bolt and push it off the ledge. Next up is the UV lamp, which is another difficult part we can kind of get in the same way. We need to bring some Puffmin and this Shearwig all the way through this little maze until we reach the wall that the UV lamp is sitting atop of. We can then kill the Shearwig with our Puffmin and use its body to clip up on the wall. And again, once we're up here, we can use Olimar's amazing nudging ability and push it right off. You wanna know what part was a real pain in the ass to get with Puffmin? The Gluon drive. And it's mostly due to the fact that it's not really worth the trouble for us to kill enemies. If we try and kill the Shearwigs, for example, most of the time what happened was that some of the Puffmin would attack them, but not all of them. Which would cause the Puffmin who did attack the Shearwigs to turn back into Pikmin. But the Puffmin who didn't would just stay Puffmin. And like I mentioned before, Puffmin and Pikmin don't mix. So most of the time, I just avoided killing enemies, and a lot of the time, it created situations like this, where I'm desperately trying to fight back these Shearwigs from eating my Pikmin, and just hoping to God that the Wollywog doesn't notice us. Which he obviously does, but somehow we build the bridge anyways. Now, all we have to do is bring the part past the Wollywog, then distract these two Bulbears and this Puffy Blowhog by lying down in the corner, giving our Pikmin safe passage back to the base. Now, it was time to open up the other half of the distant spring. And to do that, we had to blow down the stone wall. And to do that, we had to bring this Shearwig all the way from the other side of the map back to the stone wall. And yes, I know there's closer Shearwigs, but they were all dead. And this little escapade took so long that all we did the entire day was break down this wall and grab the Zirconium rotor. Thankfully though, the day after, we were able to get a bit more done. we were able to quickly grab the pilot seat, and then I made my way over to the number 2 Ionium jet. The way you normally get the number 2 Ionium jet is by throwing blue Pikmin up on this wall, using the geyser to get Olimar up there, and then throwing them over the gap onto the part. And this one's a bit weird, because even in my no throws challenge, I had to use a single throw to get my Pikmin up on the wall. Well, actually, that's not even true. I couldn't even do it. I had to show a clip of Mocha G doing it because I'm ass. But basically, the method involves throwing one Pikmin at a snitch bug to knock it down, then swarming it with the rest of your squad and hope that the snitch bug shades them off onto the upper level. And for the longest time, I thought this was how you got this part with the least amount of throws possible. But then my boy Sample went and dropped this video and opened my eyes to the wonders of the Dumple Fling. Basically, if you walk back and forth just inside of the aggro range of a Dumple, something in its AI will get confused and it'll just start drifting off in the direction it was last pointed at. So if we get it pointed at the wall near the Ionium jet, we can do this little dance right outside of its aggro range and get it to drift over towards the wall. Once it's there, we can kill it with Olimar and use the pelleted drop to clip up on the wall. And if you're wondering why we can't just lure the Dumple over to the wall ourselves, it's because just like with the Bulborb I mentioned earlier, it has a home range. And when it reaches the limit of that home range, it'll just turn around and walk straight back. And the spot we have it in now is way outside of its home range. So without the Dumple Fling, we wouldn't be able to get it over here. But now that we're up on the wall, we can slowly but surely push the Ionium jet into the water. Next up is the Chronos Reactor. A part you need yellow and blue Pikmin for, and a bunch of throws. So I hope you're not tired of the Dumple Fling yet, because we have to use it again. But instead of going towards the Ionium jet this time, we want to send the Dumple over towards the Chronos Reactor. So we do the little dance and send the Dumple on his way, watching him slowly climb up the shoreline, and then kill him when he's close to the wall. And by this point, you know the drill. We push a pellet close to the wall, use it to clip up, and then push the Chronos Reactor down. We then scoop it up with our Puffmin and run interference on any enemy in the way. So up to this point, the challenge had been going pretty smoothly. Aside from the little issue with the bombs earlier, I've used Puffmin to collect every part we've gotten so far. But unfortunately, that was about to change. Because the next part on our list, the Interstellar Radio, is impossible to obtain without throws. Unfortunately for us, the part lies inside a puffy blowhog, and the only way to reach it is by throwing Pikmin. And I knew this was coming. I knew that throws were required to beat Pikmin 1. So I came up with a small rule change to try and keep the integrity of the challenge alive, while still allowing us to push forward. Basically, if I had to use Pikmin or throws of any kind, I had to use the absolute least amount possible. That means if a part can be obtained by one Pikmin and one throw, I have to use that method. At least this way, the majority of the run is still done by Puffmin, and Pikmin are used in the least amount possible. And luckily for us, the Interstellar Radio can be obtained by one Pikmin and one throw precisely. If we bring a blue Pikmin over to this little island and lure the blowhog over as well, it'll bring it right to the edge of its home range. And for some reason, when the blowhog reaches this limit, it just kind of freezes in place. You can see here, we can throw one Pikmin on him and he won't even bother shaking it off. He will literally just sit there while he dies a slow, agonizing death. And once he dies and drops the part, we can come back with our Puffmin and bring the Interstellar Radio back to base, doing it with only one blue Pikmin and one throw. Oh, and I should probably mention that at this point in the run, I was getting a lot better at converting my Pikmin into Puffmin. There's actually a really consistent way to do it. If you swarm the Puffstool with your C-Stick, dismiss your Pikmin right underneath him, and then use your whistle as soon as his mushroom top lifts into the air, you'll pretty much perform the glitch every time. So, if you want to try it yourself, that's the way to do it. Okay, so we had one more part to get in the distant spring. And that part was going to be a problem. Just like the interstellar radio before it, the bowsprit was locked inside of an enemy, the armored cannon beetle. The way you beat the armored cannon beetle is by throwing a Pikmin into its blowhole while it's about to attack, and then run around to its back once its armored shell is opened up and throw Pikmin on his weak point. And you can probably see the problem here, because that's a lot of throws and a lot of Pikmin. Thankfully for us, there is a way to kill him with only 2 throws, but it's not easy. And it's even harder with Puffmin. The way I did it in my no throws video was to throw a Pikmin in his blowhole and then swarm his back with the C-stick. This allows some Pikmin to jump on his back and actually do some damage. But it does way less damage than if you were to just throw them on his back, so it's actually impossible to kill him in one cycle with this. Because after a certain amount of time, the armored cannon beetle will close its wings and knock your Pikmin off, so you need at least 2 throws to deal enough damage to kill him. And this is going to be a big problem for us, because when Puffmin attack the beetle and get knocked off, it'll count as a task being completed, so they'll turn back into normal Pikmin. Which means we have to run all the way back to base and convert them back into Puffmin. Which may not seem like a big deal until you realize the armored cannon beetle regenerates his health. And he regenerates it really fast. You can see here, when I leave, his health bar is almost down to 1/4. And then when I come back, there's almost 3/4 remaining. So in the time I was gone, he gained almost half of his health bar back. Oh yeah, and to make it even more annoying, to even get this whole process started in the first place, I had to bring all my Puffmin and 1 red Pikmin. Which is a problem because Puffmin and Pikmin don't mix well. So I had to throw 1 Pikmin aside, convert the rest to Puffmin, whistle the red Pikmin before they came into contact, and then grab him so he couldn't do any damage. I then threw him into the blowhole, did as much damage as I could, ran back to the base, converted all my Pikmin back to Puffmin again, and then tried to kill him as quickly as I could. And so many times, I came so close until I was finally able to do it. But unfortunately, we just added 2 more Pikmin and 2 more throws to our total, which is now at 3 Pikmin and 3 throws. Thankfully, the next part was a little more kind to us. To get the next part, we needed to go back to the Forest Navel and kill the Puffstool. And you would think you would need throws for this enemy, but you really don't. If you swarm the Puffmin around his feet, they'll stay latched onto him as he flips over. And then all you have to do is sit there and wait until he dies. There was something just very cathartic about killing the Puffstool with his own children. I don't know, it just felt right. So after we brought the Omega Stabilizer back to base, I got a bunch of bombs with my Puffmin, lured the Sheargrub over to the wall, guarding BD Longlegs, and blew it down. And BD Longlegs is another enemy that was going to cause us major issues. The only part of BD Longlegs that can be damaged is this middle section here. And the only way to reach this middle section is by throwing Pikmin. In my least amount of throws videos, I stated that I thought the least amount of throws to kill BD Longlegs was 18. And I couldn't have been more wrong. The least amount of throws isn't 18. It isn't even 10. The least amount of throws to kill BD Longlegs is 1. The only caveat is that you have to be extremely lucky. When you throw a Pikmin on BD, he will try and shake them off. And there's a chance that the Pikmin won't get knocked off and will keep attacking. The only problem is the Pikmin has to do this like 20 times. And the odds of this happening naturally are slim to none. But it technically is still possible. Through the use of save states, I was actually able to kill BD with only 1 Pikmin and only 1 throw. Basically, I made a state right before BD was about to shake. If he knocked the Pikmin off, I reset. And if he didn't, I created a new save state. And I did this until he died, which took a very long time. And for some reason, this doesn't work if you're standing right by BD though. Every time I was in the actual arena, the Pikmin would fall off no matter what. But if I left the arena and just kind of ran back and forth in front of it, the Pikmin would fall off way less. I have no idea why this is, it's just Pikmin 1 being Pikmin 1. At this point in the run, we only had 2 parts remaining. The Geiger counter and the positron generator. I decided to tackle the Geiger counter first, and let me tell you, that was a mistake. We had already broken down the stone wall leading to the Geiger counter earlier in the run, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was this cardboard box. You're supposed to move this box by either taking blues into the water and throwing them on the other side, or throwing Pikmin on top of the box and maneuvering them off the edge. And doing this without throwing is actually pretty easy as well. All you need to do is bring some blues into the water, dismiss them, and then bring either reds or yellows into the water as well. The blue Pikmin will try and save the other Pikmin by throwing them onto land. And if you set it up right, they'll throw them right behind the bots, allowing them to push it. But unfortunately, this doesn't work with Puffmin. Puffmin can't be dismissed. And for that blue Pikmin trick to work, they have to be dismissed. If they're under your control, they won't help the other Pikmin. And not only that, when a Puffmin gets thrown by a blue Pikmin, we aren't able to call them back into our party. We can't interact with them at all. They're just stuck. And eventually, they'll turn back into a regular Pikmin. And at this point, I was kind of stuck. Because this was the only way I knew how to do this. So, I tried theory crafting some ideas. Like, maybe this Bulborb could shake the Pikmin up onto this ledge, and we could get out of bounds ourselves and bring them over to the Snagrid area. Or we could use a Snitch Bud to grab the Pikmin and plant them up on the ledge, then we could pick them and kill the Snagrids afterwards. But even if we could get the Bulborb or Snitch Bud to cooperate, it still wouldn't work. Whenever a Puffmin is shaken off by a Bulborb, it'll turn back into a Pikmin. And same with when it's grabbed by a Snitch Bug. No matter what I did, I either needed to use Pikmin or throws. There was no way I could move the bots without both of them. So, I made the unfortunate decision to grab 10 blue Pikmin, throw them on the bots, and then kill the Snagrit with my Puffmin. Which was a pain in the ass in itself because I couldn't one-shot it. So, I had to attack it once, grab all my Pikmin, go back to base, convert them, and then come back and finish the job. Now, we've come to the last part, the positron generator. To get this part, you need to blast down this stone wall, and then attack the pearly clamp until you kill it. And once again, blasting down the stone wall wasn't an issue. We got a bunch of bombs, brought the Mamutsa over, got him to attack them, and voila. The problem is getting the part out of the pearly clamp. The part is sitting inside of the clam, which means we can't just use blue Pikmin and swarm it. We have to use throws. And there is a way to do this throwless, but again, it doesn't work with Puffmin. To do this without throws, you have to first get a red Pikmin, bring him into the water, whistle him towards the clam, then once he reaches it, push him into the clam with Olimar, which will force him to jump up and attack the part. And then you just rinse and repeat until the part is free. But unfortunately, when Puffmin start drowning, they don't respond to the whistle. They will just sit there in place until they drown. So once again, we're forced to use a Pikmin. Thankfully this time, it's only one, and we don't have to waste any throws. So I spend half the day using this single red Pikmin to break the part free, then gather up some Puffmin and bring the part home. Which brings our total amount of Pikmin used to 13 and our total throws to 12. And this is where it would stay. Technically, we just beat the game. The final trial that holds the last ship part is completely optional. Olimar's ship does not need the secret safe to fly. Besides, I can tell you right now that the final trial is not doable with only Puffmin. So, I think it's best to cut our losses and leave the planet in one piece. So aside from the 13 Pikmin and 12 throws we used, and this little issue with the bombs, you can totally beat the game with only Puffmin. Honestly though, I was kinda surprised just how many parts we were able to get. There were only 4 parts we couldn't collect legitimately. And with how many limitations Puffmin have, I think I'm happy with that. Seriously though, they have so many limitations that this challenge felt like doing multiple challenges at once. I couldn't throw, I couldn't really use the whistle, and I couldn't really kill enemies because it took too long. It's like a no throwing, no whistle pacifist run all rolled into one challenge. And this is ignoring the most annoying fact about Puffmin, the fact that they change back into Pikmin after doing a task. I didn't really touch on it too much in the video, but constantly going back to base to convert them to Puffmin was so annoying and so tedious. And it's for these reasons I'll be giving this challenge a difficulty rating of 8 out of 10. This video was made possible by our amazing patrons: Logan Buchanan, Metin Coker, Alexander Thompson, Nolan Filter, Marcus Vandergaard, Real Backfish, Rebecca Lawns, Phoenix Lazuli, Dragoon, Dr. Nook, Rooney4, Leburb, Puddles Megan, General Josher, Omo, Fossil, Koi13, Darman, Ryan Levin, and Anarchist Kale. Thank you so much for supporting Press A and everything we do. And a huge thank you to Minty Meeo for making this mod and video possible.